Hi everybody, this is Kevin from Horology Project. Got a special video for you today. I have my Seamaster 300M here to show to you guys. This is a really special reference Seamaster. If you haven't been able to notice yet, but I will, before talking about that, I'm going to do a wristwatch check for today. And today I'm wearing my vintage Seamaster from the 1960s, which, by the way, was my first Swiss watch I ever purchased. And I'm really thankful to have gotten into Omega at that time. If you didn't know, Omega is actually one of my favorite brands, if not my favorite brand of watch, and it really got me into watches. And I've had a ton of Omegas, but for whatever reason, I've only featured one Omega on this channel. And I think a part of that is because I love the brand so much that I want to do the videos justice. And I've told myself, oh, I really need to up the quality of these videos, but what ends up happening is I end up selling them, and then I never get to show you guys the videos. So before making that mistake again, I decided to record this video as well as a video on another Omega Seamaster that I have. So speaking of that, this is a rarer reference. You might be thinking, what are you talking about? This is the Brosnan reference, but you would be wrong. This is the Transitional Reference 2220.80. So watches sometimes have what's called a transitional reference. And what that means is when you have, let's say, a watch like the Seamaster, the Brosnan watch, and they're about to come out with a new watch, right? The ceramic watch. Sometimes they'll have an in-between reference of those two references, and that is what ends up being dubbed the transitional reference. So it's kind of the middle child, if you will. And some of the reasons why that happens is because they're trying to push the boundaries of their design, but they're not ready to commit to maybe a fully new design. And that's what happened maybe with this 300M, where they pushed the design without fully committing to the ceramic. So it ends up creating some cool references because you get a little bit of the past while still enjoying a part of the present, and that's very true for this Seamaster 300M, where it has most of the design cues of the original Brosnan watch, but ends up having these cool add-on bonuses that really elevate the watch more to a higher level. And then typically they also become a little bit more rare. So one of the things that we need to celebrate with at least this 300M is that Omega is finally making the right decision and just marrying a watch design. So like we know with the Rolex Submariner, they've kept that watch design consistent since the 1950s. And even though the Seamaster line has been around since the 1950s, probably even before that, the Seamaster has changed a lot through the years, as is an example of this watch right here, where it was more of a dress watch with a little bit of water resistant protection to it. So this Seamaster has now had 4 different generations, if you will, of designs that have come its way, with a lot of iterations in between each new generation, but with this one being a really special reference. So let's talk a little bit about the dimensions of this watch, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more about the reference dimensions between the classic version, which would be the reference 2541, which is the quartz Seamaster that was featured in GoldenEye, and then in Brosnan's later movies, the 2531, which is the same Seamaster, but with the automatic caliber 1119 or 1120. So hopefully I'm getting all these numbers right. I'm doing everything from memory today. So as far as dimensions are concerned, they're pretty much identical with the dimensions of the original Brosnan Seamaster. So, you know, depending on where you hit these lugs, they're about, I get somewhere around 46.5 to 47, depending on how far down the tip you go there. So somewhere around 47 and a half, and they can kind of, the lugs kind of taper inward to around 45 and a half-ish, 46. So really, really nice across the wrist. And then as far as the width of the watch, it's a classic 41, and it's pretty much right on the nose there with that. And then the actual lug width is 20 millimeters, and it's a full 20 millimeter with no taper. The big difference between the Brosnan watch and this one is it's a little bit thicker because it has a different movement, which we'll talk about in a second. A lot of people say that this watch is 12 and a half, but every single time I measure this watch, I get closer to 12 millimeters. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong or how people are measuring that, because I'm including the domed sapphire here, and I'm consistently getting around 12 millimeters. So that still makes it about half a millimeter bigger. So not very much, not thicker, that is. From the original, you're really not going to notice too big of a difference unless you have the quartz version and you jump to this, which that would be probably about a full millimeter difference. So let's talk a little bit about the design differences. So like I said before, this is in between the classic Brosnan 2531 and the ceramic version, the first generation ceramic version that came after it, that was replaced in 2018. So the differences are that they are many. That it has a updated case back that's the same as the ceramic, so it's a much more premium, well-designed case back. It has the same bracelet, but it is, while it's the same bracelet, it is a newer version of that same bracelet. So I think they fixed some of the stretch issues they were having, and that was just kind of like a small, soft upgrade that they didn't really talk about. But the more noticeable ones would be that increase in thickness because of the new movement, the applied indices that you can notice here, and the red Seamaster text. That's one of the quickest ways to identify this watch. So in the other Seamasters, that Seamaster text is down here, and it's not in red. In this one, it's in red. So this started that trend of putting the red Seamaster. And then, as Omega loves to brag about, the coaxial escapement. So this has the first coaxial escapement in a 300M Omega Seamaster. And of course, I got it in blue, right? So what's neat, though, about this watch is this watch, if you didn't know, was featured in Daniel Craig's debut film, Casino Royale, which is hallmarked as one of the best Bond films, if not the best Bond film out there. So sorry, Sean Connery fans. A vote was done, and people consider it kind of the best Bond film, and I'm not going to disagree, although I do love some of the originals from Sean Connery, specifically Goldfinger. So this was the last 300M Seamaster to be featured in Casino Royale, and it was in 3/4 of the movie, despite the Planet Ocean line getting most of the ad or the notoriety for this film. This was on Daniel Craig's wrist more, and one of my favorite scenes that it's on Daniel Craig's wrist, along with Omega fans out there, is when they're in the train and Vesper asks, what are you wearing, Rolex? And Daniel, with his British accent, says Omega. And then she looks at it and says, beautiful. He's wearing this watch. He's wearing this watch when he's gambling, when he's sailing, when he's in Venice, and pretty much for most of the film. And it's just such a beautiful watch, along with the applied indices and applied logo. Although I think I am more of a fan of the printed logo, because under certain lights, the logo kind of, unfortunately, it disappears a little bit if it's under a shadow. But when it catches the light right, boy, does it elevate this watch into luxury status. So I love it because it has the more tool aesthetic of the older watches from the 90s and back, while still kind of having some more luxury cues that we see with more modern watches. This watch has been incredibly accurate for me, running at +2 to -0.5 seconds a day. And to talk a little bit more about the coaxial movement in it, it's the 2500 C movement in it. The ceramic version has the 2500 D movement in it, and there's small differences between those two that aren't that significant. But the D movement resolves some of the issues that the C movement was having with respect to seizing and oil issues. Mine has been working really well, and thankfully, as I said with the accuracy, it's been very, very accurate. The movement, though, the 2500 movement is based on the 1120 movement from Omega, which is also based on the ETA 2892. So it's a ETA 2892-A2 modified to Omega standards to be a chronometer grade movement. And then in addition to that, they put the coaxial escapement in it. And that makes it pretty unique and pretty much Omega. And I love that. Omega is such a great brand, and I really can't recommend it enough, especially the Seamaster lineup, just because it's so much watch for the money. And I know they're not cheap. You're going to have to pay $2,000 and up for most Seamasters if you're getting used Seamasters of the Brosnan era, or at least the pre-ceramic Seamasters. You're going to have to pay at least around $2,000 if you're on the lower end to $2,500 on the higher end, and with the new ones obviously being $3,000 and up. So it's not cheap, but when you compare what you're getting to other luxury brands of the same era, I believe that Omega offers more than what you can get from most other luxury brands. And thankfully, especially if you buy these Seamasters pre-owned, their value has stabilized on the pre-owned market, and now these are increasing in value, where before with the original Brosnan watch, you could have gotten them for like $1,500. You can't do that anymore. At least not without going against what the market trend has been. But this watch in particular, because it's a rare gem with a smaller production run, I suspect this to be a collector's choice in the future, specifically because it was the last Seamaster 300M to be worn by James Bond. I think that might be changing with No Time to Die, but it was the last blue Seamaster 300M worn by James Bond. It had a shorter production run. It's Daniel Craig, which is kind of the favorite Bond right now of recent era, and it's considered to be one of the best Bond movies that this watch was featured in. So I think all that together is going to make for an awesome collectible watch. So if you want to get one, try picking it up. They're a little harder to find, and you have to be patient, and it took me a long time before I finally found this watch, but really glad to add it to my collection. All right, well, I think that is enough talking about this watch. If you have any questions about it, feel free to leave a comment. I do my best to answer all your comments and things like that. But I got a quick question for you. Are you a fan of this reference? What's your favorite? Let's just ask it this way. What's your favorite Seamaster 300M reference and why? So go ahead and put that in the comment section. I'm curious to see if you're a fan of the original quartz or the automatic that came right before this one, or the new ceramic, or the ceramic without the wave dial. So go ahead and put that in the comment and let me know what your favorite Seamaster 300M is. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to keep up with all the watch videos I create, go ahead and hit subscribe, and that encourages me. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers to see what it's like to actually be able to earn some money on YouTube, although I'm sure it's going to be pennies, but hey, that'll make me feel a little bit better. All right, well, I'll catch you in the next one.